Please pray with me. May these words that I speak be grounded in my soul, encouraged by the God presence in me. And may these words that you hear be captured by your soul, enlivened by the God presence in you. Amen. This story of the prodigal son is one of the best known of the parables told by Jesus. And the most widely understood interpretation is that the father in this story is God, and the prodigal is me, or you. The message is that although we turn away from God, and by turning away, it could be anything in terms of how we live, or how we choose to ignore whatever might be going on in our lives or the world, but that in all of that, grace and unconditional love prevails, so that we can take comfort in the fact that we cannot escape the presence of love, the very presence of God. Now, this particular interpretation may be true, and that's all well and fine, but there are a few things in this story that make me wonder if there might have been a little different intent when Jesus told this one. I wonder, for instance, why the father in this story doesn't go looking for his lost son, even though so many of the other parables are that kind of story. And that there's no mention, not a single mention of how dad is doing until the prodigal returns. I wonder also why in the story there's no response from the prodigal son about how he felt with returning to this celebration, to a slaughtered calf, to new clothes. And I wonder why Jesus would have a story end with a prodigal returning back to the affluent life he left. I wonder, could it possibly be that this parable was intended to be seen as a tragedy? Kester Bruin, who is a British teacher, freelance writer, and author, including a widely acclaimed book called The Complex Christ, says this: rather than seeing this story as a son's rebellion and a father's magnanimous forgiveness, what might happen if we view it as a tragic tale describing a failed revolution, a failed rebellion? You see, the prodigal's family knows neither want or need because of their excessive wealth. The older son has no choice but to work in the family business out of duty. That was the cultural norm. But the younger son isn't subject to that duty, and he is discontent. And he wants to explore the world. We aren't told in this story what his reason was for his discontent. But regardless, he is soon faced with a world very, very different from the comfortable one he left. He now knows deep poverty and real need. He learns what it is to have an empty stomach, something that never was part of his experience before. This is the crisis moment in this story. He knows he can go back to his father. But now he has a deep discomfort with living off the family wealth, when he has lived among and seen so many others hungry and in great suffering. As the psalm said this morning, "Oh, my beloved, you are my guide. You teach me to walk in the light." And the light that this prodigal encounters is that he wants to return as a hired hand. He wants to do a day's work for a day's pay. But in the story, when he returns, the father refuses to hear his son's new understanding of life. He simply shuts him down. He shuts him down. This father with excess wealth, and despite the famine that's still raging outside his property gates, slaughters a calf. So Kester Bruin says of this story, the story charts a failure. The failure is neither in the son's leaving the state, nor in his attempt to go back under different conditions. The failure is in the son's attempt, but it is rather in accepting his father's offer to be reintegrated into the safe enclosure of the wealthy estate. It seems to me that ultimately there is no metanoia for the prodigal. There is no real change of heart and mind. There's no real transformation. This is the tragedy. Bruin cleverly contrasts this to the relationship between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader in Star Wars. How many of you have seen those movies? Okay, some of you have. When Darth Vader, who's on the side of the evil empire, reveals that he is Luke's father, and Luke is on the good side, he wants his son to join him so that together they might rule the universe. There is a promise of wealth and a hope to mend a broken relationship between father and son. But the response is different. Watch this video clip, which features Luke's return to his father.
This is a rebel that surrendered to us. Although he denies it, I believe there may be more of them, and I request permission to conduct a further search of the area. He was armed only with this.
Good work, Commander. Leave us. Conduct your search and bring his companions to me.
Yes, my lord.
The Emperor has been expecting you.
I know, Father.
So, you have accepted the truth.
I've accepted the truth that you were once Anakin Skywalker, my father.
That name no longer has any meaning for me.
It is the name of your true self you've only forgotten. I know there is good in you. The Emperor hasn't driven it from you fully. That was why you couldn't destroy me. That's why you won't bring me to your Emperor now.
I see you have constructed a new lightsaber. Your skills are complete. Indeed, you are powerful, as the Emperor has foreseen.
Come with me.
Obi-Wan once thought as you do. You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master.
I will not turn, and you'll be forced to kill me.
If that is your destiny.
Search your feelings, Father. You can't do this. I feel the conflict within you. Let go of your hate.
It is too late for me, son. The Emperor will show you the true nature of the Force. He is your master now.
Then my father is truly dead.
different act of rebellion. What happens, for those of you who don't know this story, is that when Luke is taken before the emperor, and he refuses to join them, the emperor begins to torture him to ultimately kill him. And his father, Darth Vader, steps in and saves him. Because this act of rebellion, unlike the prodigals of a son against his father, does not in the end stand against his father, but eventually leads Darth Vader to his own salvation through love. So why do I choose to see the story this way? It seems to me that it is a better way to understand this parable in the context of the season of Lent. We are heading towards Jesus' arrival in Jerusalem, where he will be arrested, tortured, and endure a painful execution. Jesus faces a similar dilemma to the prodigal in the crisis moment. To stay in the pain and the suffering out of love for this world, or to return to Galilee, to return to family, to return to the culture he knows out of fear of the world. Kester Bruin says, at any moment, Jesus could leave the cross and find a warm welcome back in the safe enclosure of the old order. Or he could commit heresy against the old order and reveal it for what it was, a form of social control which served to keep a priestly elite well-fed and wealthy while loading the poor with endless rules about what they could or could not do. We know what choice Jesus made. He chose to stand in the name of love, to open to the pain and suffering, as well to open to the great joy and celebration beyond the gates of wealth and affluence. He chose to include everyone at the table in love. Everyone, it seems, except those who refused to love and chose to exclude others. Jesus is calling us to see and embrace the world beyond our own safe enclosures, to risk greater love, and to trust that it is in loving more completely that we will experience our own ongoing transformation of mind and heart. The prodigal might have truly experienced transformation if he had let love and not fear guide his life upon his return. And his father, like Darth Vader, might have found salvation in the experience of rebellion grounded in love, and then loving unconditionally in return. Jesus continues to be the one we follow 2,000 years later, not because he was separate from our human experience in the world, but because he lived in the world more deeply and more authentically human, choosing the path of love over fear for his own life, and choosing the path of love over fear in every single encounter on his journey. This is what it means to understand God as cosmos and soul. Jesus understood way ahead of his time that the Spirit of God present throughout the universe is also deeply present in every being, including himself, leading him to realize that every one of us is charged to bring the Spirit of God, the Spirit of love, to light in the world. Oh, that I might trust enough to find the courage to live that way, committed heart and soul to the path of love, so that, like Jesus and like Luke Skywalker, I too might become a prodigal undone.